Well, I think if we
because
can
international, and it would be it's so complex and so expensive to make something international that even in Betet, everybody could start. Every locality could start a Delphic game. What do you think?
Well, no, that's a good idea. I mean, the idea is that Delphic Games should have like a regional, local team. So we should have a French council, and I think I think France would be a good place for this because France is teeming with artists.
Yes.
Even our little village here has great painters, poets, and so on. So we could have a mini Delphic Games in La Creuse, say. And for instance, I discovered something interesting that I didn't know before. There's a European prize for literature given every year to something written or a film or something. And it's sponsored by Charente, which is a department in France. So the Charente department give this prize. And I was thinking we could do something like that with La Creuse. So La Creuse could organise, a contest or something, a Delphic mini games for the artists of this region, which would be good for La Creuse because it's not famous or anything.
Yeah.
But we are teaming with artists, and so.
But even with the Francophonie, we could invite artists for anywhere in speaking French.
World.
Yes.
Yeah. Voila. Yes. So anyway, that's put that in your pipe and smoke it, so to say. Let's plan for that, and we can work with the library system because the Department of La Creuse library system could be part of it. And in this European Literary Prize that Charente give out every year, the Charente library system is a key sponsor. They also get sponsorship from Cognac. It's called the Jean Monnet European Prize for Literature, because Jean Monnet, who was one of the founders of the European Union, was a rich guy who was from the Cognac business. And the Cognac people are still funding that prize. So we need to find the equivalent for La Creuse,
We have Tapestry? Is that how you call it the name?
The Tapestries,
Yes.
yeah. Maybe they would sponsor something, because that's an art form, tapestry.
Yeah.
And must be others around. Yeah.
That would be nice to find another financial model as well, as because sponsorship is.
Well, it can be too egotistical. It's that they have too much power, I suppose. It should be the little people clubbing together.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you for that question. That's important. Okay.
I had another question.
Go for it. Yeah.
I was wondering in the Yiddish and the dollar, because you spoke about New York. Do you know the origin of the term dollar?
Yes, it's from Dutch, Thaler. Well, it's from German actually. Thaler. It was in use among the Dutch speakers before the English turned up. Came from the word Thaler, which was the common currency of Germany and Holland at the time. Okay. This is given in the dictionary by Rabbi Klein, just to confirm what I'm saying. You see, he gives the details. That's what I love about this guy. He was a real scholar. Dollar comes from late German Daler, from Old German Thaler. It was an abbreviation of Joachimsthal, meaning the Valley of Joachim in Bohemia, so called from the piece of money first coined there in 1519.
Wow.
Compare Dutch, Dalde, is that right? And how do you say dollar or Dalde?
Dollar?
Yeah.
Almost the same thing as in English, I believe.
Okay, just maybe a slightly different accent.
Yes.
Danish, Swedish, Daler, Italian, Talero.
Perhaps gulden. I'm not sure if that's the same kind of money, but...
Okay. Anyway, so there we are. I didn't know it came from the Valley of Joachim in Bohemia, which was where they first coined the piece in 1519. But this, you know, this guy would have beavered away in libraries because he wrote this long before the internet. It was all library research, which is, you know, what I like as well.
Oh, you used another word around 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Dysphora was, I'm not sure about what you used it again. It was while you were talking about the Yiddish people.
Yiddish, yeah.
They released it in the Dysphora, I believe you said, perhaps. The whole Dysphora?
Oh, the diaspora.
Diaspora.
Yes, that's a word meaning the widespread community. Is that not a word you're familiar with?
No.
No. Okay. I'll give the etymology then. It's a good word. I love it.
Yeah.
Sounds really nice.
Lebanese diaspora, so many people diaspora.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
have been spread in other countries.
Oh, that much?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it comes from Greek. He gives the Greek origin, diaspora, a scattering about, dispersion, from the Greek term diasperein, to scatter about or distribute, from dia, which is the Greek for about, round, through, and sperein, to scatter. And then he cross-references, says, see spore. So what a plant does with its spores is it scatters them about. So it's going back to the ecology of mind. There's an example of how our language is also nature-based.
Yeah.
You know, a spore, which is like the seedlings of plants blown on the wind, is how life survives. And it's technically the spore is the reproductive body of flowerless plants, which corresponds to the seeds of flowering plants. Comes from modern Latin spora, from Greek spora, a sowing, a seed, related to sporos, a sowing. And also the word sperm comes from the same root. This is the male seed. So this is what I love. To me, studying these words is like a meditation. You can do a meditation on the connection of all these words, and you can get a visual image of spores flying in the wind, of peoples like the Jewish diaspora or the French diaspora, or the Dutch diaspora. There are still people speaking Dutch in New York State today. You know, these languages are like spores blown on the wind. The English diaspora, people all over the what used to be the colonies.
You're part of.
Yeah.
I suppose I'm part of the English diaspora.
A spore, yes.
Yeah,
A little mushroom.
yeah. Scattered. That's right, and that's fine. So we're all organic beings, just blowing in the wind, as Dylan said.
Beautiful metaphor.
It's good, isn't it? And just to say, so I use these language etymologies as a meditation tool, because then I study this word and that word. I see they're interconnected, and then I visualize the interconnection in my meditation. And then so I've been doing that just naturally since the age of about 21, right? Without anybody teaching me, it's just what comes, right?
Yeah.
And then I went and studied the Kabbalah in detail, looked at their texts, and in the 13th century, these amazing Kabbalists from Spain and southern France were writing books about meditating on the word. So what you were supposed to do is visualize the word of God, the name of God, Yahweh, or Elohim, or different forms of the names of God, and then you'd visualize the shape like on a hill in letters of light. So you'd go into deep meditation, you'd visualize it, and you'd see like it shining with light, and then you would download whatever it was trying to say to you. And that was the meditation these guys were doing in the 12th century in southern France, right? And it's as if I sort of intuitively reinvented that just through my own etymological studies. It always makes me think of the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
Which is kind of the big letters shining at night, Hollywood. And, it's kind of like that, but with the names of God.
Dysphora wood.
Why can't we have the names of God, shining on the mountains of the world? That's a world of peace. So that's the point of my 99 Names of Peace book, which will be published by Christmas. And so that's exciting. Well, thanks. Okay.
I still have.
Yeah. Another question.
Well,
Okay.
you gave us so many opportunity to make connections. So
Sure.
I really enjoy watching a movie who trace the origin of the English Oxford English Dictionary.
Oh yeah, that's a great story.
It's
I
a
love
fantastic story. And what is the difference between these two dictionaries?
Well, the Oxford English Dictionary is huge. It's bigger, right? It's vast, and it was commissioned by Oxford University Press, and the guy that edited it, I can't remember his name now. He got a team of researchers to put each word on a slip of paper. So let's say diaspora. You know, somebody, some old granny in whatever, you know, Chelmsford would, I'll do diaspora. So she would go to the library and find all the earliest references to that word in English literature, going back to what's called Middle English, which was from about 1100 to 1450 AD. So there are texts in Middle English, and she would track, oh, diaspora appeared in that poem in 1150 or 1230, and she'd write out the example in longhand, and then trace it all the way through from into Elizabethan literature. Did Shakespeare use the term diaspora? You know, now we can just ask ChatGPT and it'll say, yes, he did in King John. But in those days, it was always done by hand on written stuff. Now,
So the meaning
in detail,
could
the
have
meaning
changed.
shifts, the meaning changes, yes, in very interesting ways. So, for example, as a philosopher, I know the following, that in medieval English, in Oxford University circles, the terms objective and subjective had the opposite meaning to what they have now. If something was a subjective truth, it meant it was real because it was divinely sanctioned. It was in the noosphere, the mind sphere, which alone has reality. Matter is just temporary, it comes and goes like the wind. In the subjective world, things are guaranteed by God's over divine intelligence.
Yeah.
So objective meant not really, it won't last
It's an
long.
abstraction.
It's just a brief thing, you know. This is a cup. It's just an object. It'll be gone soon, you know. Whereas something subjective, like the truths I'm trying to talk about in this philosophy club, they're eternal.
Real.
They're real.
Yeah.
You know. But if you study the meaning of subjective and objective, they shifted in about the 1850s, when things that were called subjective were regarded now as meaningless because you can't measure them or test them. They don't have any real reality, so they're just subjective. It's an insult. Oh, he's just talking subjective nonsense. Whereas, oh, it's objective, it's scientific, it's real. Then that became like real. So that's an example of studying semantic shift over time.
It's amazing.
Well, it is extraordinary. Yeah. What I love about being a philosopher and an etymologist is it's like doing mining deep underground,
You come
beneath
across
the
it.
words, finding the gold that connects them all, you know. And so I love that English dictionary, the Oxford one. I have it here in the house. I have the version that's in tiny text and you have a magnifying glass, because the real thing is like 15 volumes, but they did it in 2 volumes on tiny, tiny writing.
Oh,
And give you a magnifying glass.
Really?
So I can, yeah, I have it upstairs. It's amazing. But it doesn't do the deep etymology into other language sources. It traces the history through English words, right back to Anglo-Saxon, which is the origin of lots of words. But he doesn't go into the detailed depth etymology that Rabbi Klein does. You need this one as well. Yeah. But I'm glad you were looking at that. Send me the link.
Yeah, it's available on YouTube. It's a fantastic movie.
it's for free.
Okay.
Yes,
Like
yes.
a reference documentary.
Yeah,
No, send me the link. I'd love that.
because in the story there is also a doctor who is in jail because he killed his wife, or I don't remember. There is an affair, and he's in a psychiatric internment. So, but he's so smart, and thanks to him, this project of making a dictionary
It happened.
could go on.
Interesting. No, send me the link. I'll look out for it.
It's an action movie with actors, not just documentary.
No.
Wow.
Okay.
But
That's
based on the true
Facts and events.
Yes.
Great.
Brilliant. Okay, now let's turn to our periodic table
Uh-huh.
and let's do the check in with the philosophical codes for this evening. It's and my essay on all this is about to be published, as I said last time, in a journal, an academic journal for teachers of religious studies and theology, which is sort of an international journal, and that's going to be fun. So it'll get it out to more people. So, which one are you going to go for? You can choose one, or just randomly. It's up to you.
Have you done 42 recently? Samaritan and Kareit?
No, we haven't done that. That's quite a good choice, isn't it? Yes. Okay, that's a good one. That's a Jewish one. Fits in with the Yiddish stuff.
Any of the big one?
The Chinese.
Yes.
Well, you choose. You say.
The contemporary one should be maybe Taoism, or
We can do Taoism, yeah. Do you want the philosophical Taoism?
Chinese legalism, maybe that one.
No, we had that a while
Well,
back.
yeah.
Do you remember?
Taoism, yes.
Let's have philosophical Taoism, because we haven't had that before, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah? Yes. Okay, so that's very exciting. Let's do the 42 first. I believe that's the secret number of the universe, isn't it, in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. 42 was the secret number that they get at the end of the plot line.
That's not the 52. The 52.
But anyway, so this is interesting. And the Samaritan, it's a small community still alive in Israel and a few scattered about. They use a form of Hebrew writing that's the oldest form that's still in use. And I have a chart of all the alphabets somewhere, but it's not to hand. And so when the earliest kingdom of Israel was founded, by tradition, sometime around about 1000 BC, by King David, who had all kinds of strange adventures. And I'm working on a commentary on the Psalms, which were traditionally ascribed to David. He established his capital in Jerusalem, which was a Jebusite city, a Canaanite city, but he captured it and turned it into the centre of his kingdom. At that time, there were alphabets around. 1000 BC, there were alphabets. And the people that were attached to the temple, which his son Solomon built in Jerusalem, they used an alphabet that was very similar to Phoenician, a very early alphabet. And they borrowed it from the Phoenicians. And the Phoenicians also helped them build the temple. Solomon was quite friendly diplomat, with the Phoenicians. They were a more advanced culture than the Israelis. They had sophisticated cities like Tyre and Sidon on the coast, which were trading all over the Mediterranean. And they had the alphabet, which was a magical tool that their traders could sail to Marseille and you could read, what was the bill of lading, so to say. Or you could go up to Britain, because they were trading to Britain as well.
And you make a letter, you don't need to carry the gold.
Yeah, that came later. But so the alphabet that was in use at that time for several hundred years was what we now call the Samaritan alphabet. They're the only tribe of Jews that have kept the old original alphabet, and their Bible, which is on scrolls, the Samaritan Bible, is the original Bible. And I would love to have a copy of it here. I've looked for it, I can't find it. You know, if anyone wants to send me a printed version of the Samaritan Bible, that would be lovely. Because then we could see what the original text was like in the earliest days of the religion of Israel. The normal. So then what happened is the kingdoms of Israel, which was the northern part of the country, and Judah, which was the southern part, were conquered by the Assyrians and Babylonians, and the people were hauled off into exile over a 100-year period. When they were in exile in Babylon, they borrowed the Aramaic alphabet, which was in use as the main alphabet in use, and it was then adopted by the Persian Empire as their main communication team. So if you're the Emperor of Persia and you want to write to a satrap, which is like a provincial governor, you wrote using the Aramaic alphabet. It was a square alphabet. And that was then adopted by the Hebrews in exile. They thought, this is quite a good tool. This is even better than our one. We'll take that back to Israel when we go back. And the king of, the emperor of Persia gave permission for the Hebrews to go back and refound Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. And that's when the Bible was written down with those square scripts, right? But this is the irony, it was only happened in Persia with the Aramaic alphabet. The original one is the Samaritan one. And the Samaritan Jews still say to this day, ours is the real Bible. We don't accept Jerusalem as the capital, because their capital was Samaria, which was, they believe, an even holier place. So they never went with the whole Jerusalem worship thing. They were there before David. They'd come back with Joshua after the exile in Egypt, and they founded their capital city in Samaria, which was the capital of Israel. And it's about 100 miles north of Jerusalem. Archaeologists have found, where it was, and they're very interesting people. We know that Jesus had a sort of, although he was regarded as the king of Israel, and Samaria is part of Israel, so he had to go there and meet the Samaritans. And he tells the story of the Good Samaritan to get across this idea of universality. Ethics isn't about race or being of this tribe or that tribe. It's who actually heals the guy. And there's a few times in the Gospels where Jesus is in the Samaritan lands. It's interesting. And he had disciples there. We know that Simon Magus, who was a Gnostic Christian, was also from the Samaritan region. I think the Samaritans are pretty amazing people. And in the wonderful television film version of these stories called The Chosen, which is on Netflix and it's got its own channel, they do that very well when he goes to the Samaritan region. So the Samaritans are important, and I'd love to see, I'd love to talk to some Samaritan philosophers about and to really study and analyse in what ways their Bible is different, and how has the Kabbalah, as it were, developed in the Samaritan, intellectual spheres. So there's a whole big conversation to have there. But if we're going to make peace, then the Samaritans have got to be part of that peace project, in my opinion. The other thing, the Karaites are interesting too. And they come from a parallel kind of initiative, slightly later, who said that, you see, in Orthodox Judaism, if you go and study as a rabbi, I've been to Jews College in London. If I wanted to be a rabbi, I'd have to go and study there for 5 years, or 10 or whatever. And then you learn the Talmud. So you learn the Bible, but you have to learn the Talmud, which is like 10 huge volumes of law, case law, to do with every aspect of life. So that as a rabbi, you can then adjudicate if two people in your congregation start fighting over who owns the wall between their two gardens. and they start, throwing stuff into each other's gardens. You can then go to the Talmud and say, well, there was a time way back when Rabbi blah blah and Rabbi so and so adjudicated and said you have to cut the wall in half or whatever.
Okay.
And so then they'd apply that case law to the current situation in the congregation. That's how the Talmud works and how being a rabbi works. But the Karaites said, we don't accept the Talmud. It's not divine. It's just rabbis, ranting rabbis. It's not divine like the Torah. So they said we should go back to the Torah itself only and base our teachings and our studies on that. And there was some, it was a strong intellectual tradition. Interesting in Ukraine and elsewhere in the diaspora of the Jews, right? And it was associated with someone called Anan ben David and Moshe Marzuk, who said we should study the original text and then base our theories on that. It's thought there are probably about 30,000 Karaites now still left in the diaspora of Jews around the world. There's only 654 Samaritans, so it's a really small number. But I think that one of the most interesting things about Israel is that it has all these complexities and it has nuances within it. And if we could get our Karaite and Samaritan brothers and sisters to discuss peace with, say, Islamic thinkers, Sufis, Christians, they'd probably find they all have a lot in common. That's the point of the 99 Names of Peace book. And yes, the values and virtues it believes in are faith, honour, honesty, wisdom, and love, and learning. So these people are highly intellectual, but also humility, because nobody can know everything. Only God knows everything. You can study as long as you like. You'll never know it all. You can only ever just know some tiny little bit. So therefore, humility is important. Their sacred mountain is called Mount Gerizim. Why can't we have a zone of peace around there? That would be nice. Okay, any questions about those?
That second book the rabbis are using.
Yeah, the Talmud.
Yes, does it get updated with new solved cases?
No, it's shut. This is one of the issues. There are lots of commentaries on it. So other rabbis have come along and written commentaries on the Talmud and updated it from their experience.
Okay.
Like a rabbi in downtown London or New York or Paris could... oh, by the way, my hero, Rabbi Klein, he served as a rabbi in Paris after World War II. He survived Auschwitz, incredibly, and was rescued from Dachau by the American army. Although his entire family was wiped out, he survived. And he went to Paris and served as a rabbi.
Wow.
Before then moving on to immigrating to Canada. Became a rabbi there. So, but, he could have written a kind of commentary on the Talmud. And they do, and then, yes. But no, good question. Yes, okay. And I know you didn't ask, but the Kabbalah, which is 96, just to complicate everything, argues that it is the original form of wisdom that Israel upholds. Jacob was the founder of Israel, his name, that he himself received divine teachings from God. And he passed that down orally to his friends, family, and descendants. And that's what the Kabbalah is. It's the oral teachings. And before him, was Abraham, who likewise was in direct contact with the divine intelligence. So their wisdom was passed down, and that's what the Kabbalah is, which means direct transmission of wisdom, which is older than the text.
はい。
You see, ultimately, much as I love the dictionaries, the words, the books,
Each
wisdom
book,
is
yeah.
older than that, obviously. It predates all that. Which is a nice segue onto Taoism. Because that's the point of Taoism. The very first scripture of Taoism says, the eternal Tao cannot be written down. It cannot be put in a book. It is a living word, a living flow. So Tao means the flow. And it's the sublime essence of being itself, which is a process, an activity. Being is, we're all being, and as we're being, like we all have millions of cells, they're all humming away, busy, doing stuff, replicating, RNAs at work, all kinds of stuff going on. So we are a process at work, each one of us. And when it says in the Bible we're made in the image of God, a Taoist would say, yeah, precisely, that's what I'm saying. We're made in the image of the process, which is the happening, the becomingness of God. Or the gods, why not use plural? Because there's so many processes going on at once. And that's what philosophical Taoism says. It's been going a long time. We have texts going back to Huang Ti, the Yellow Emperor, who ruled 2697 BC, and who wrote about medicine. Because if you're a Taoist sage, you will study the body and you'll take the pulse. You'll see what the flow is in the body. Is it blocked? And that's why they invented acupuncture. Because that's the system, these meridians of monitoring the flow, which really for them is where the astral body meets the physical body. So we're all an astral form, an immortal soul, inhabiting the physical body for a time. The Taoists say that when our physical body's finished and we've done our time, we're 110 or whatever, time to move on, our soul body then goes back to the heaven worlds and meets the other sages. They're all up there, right? And from time to time, Chinese Taoist philosophers can access the heavenly sages realm and download a scripture. So talking about updating the Talmud, that's what they're doing. They're updating from the source, which is the heavenly library, I call it, the heaven worlds, where great sages can then download texts. And I have an encyclopedia of Taoism next door, which has information on all this. And it tells you which texts were downloaded in the 14th century, 15th, 16th, 17th, by different Taoist philosophers. And these are regarded as holy. They're in Chinese, obviously, but they've been translated, most of them. And they regard these as sacred as the Bible or something, because they come direct from the heavenly kingdoms. And so they're kept in Taoist temples. The priests are trained to teach from them. They also have the original text of Lao Tzu, and he was a very great seer, sage, but he was not the only one. There's a lineage which goes on to now of people that can read the Tao, the way. The I Ching, which I consulted this morning in my prayer time, I always do a prayer time every day, that's another text in Taoism that's very important. And that is a set of trigrams, each joined to make a hexagram, 64 hexagrams, with broken and unbroken lines. And they make patterns, which then are explained cosmologically. And the text then gives a commentary about what is the auguries of the moment, because all of existence is in this constant flow of change, but Taoists believe that you can learn to read it, and you can know, what's the propitious way to act in any given situation.